Hi crafters, this is Crafty Sabby and I'm happy to share my very first YouTube video with you. I was recently at Michael's and purchased the Simply Charmed Cricut cartridge. I particularly like the image of the scarecrow on the front. He inspired me to want to come home and create a fall card to share with all of you. The other thing that I really liked about this was that once I got into the handbook, on page 57 where I found the image of this little guy was also an image of a female version of a scarecrow. So what I thought we would do is use the same sort of pattern paper and set up for the card that we're going to make together. However, we're going to swap out the image of the male scarecrow with the female version. So let's get started on that. I generally make most of my cards in a standard A2 size, which is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock cut in half. So when you cut it in half, you'll end up with the ability to make 2 cards. This particular paper is called Spring Polka Dot, and it's reversible. So on the inside there's a sort of light green color. It's from my mind's eye. However, I do think that this is old stock, and you may not be able to find this particular one, but anything you use like this, or with the general fall color feel, will be perfect for this project. So on top of that, I have a mat, which is cut out of that green color that we talked about on the inside. And this mat measures 4 3/4 by 3.5. And what I did to the mat was I just distressed all of the edges, if you can see that, with Tim Holtz Distress ink. It's called Vintage Photo, and it really does give the mat a really nice sort of vintage feel, which is nice for the fall. And then on top of that, I adhered a piece of green burlap. Not too sure where I got this burlap. This is also pretty old, but you could probably get it at any craft store. I stuck it down with some Aleene's tacky glue, which when you put it on comes out white, but it will dry clear, so you can't see anything through it. And on top of that, I found some brown cross-stitching floss, and what we're going to do is put sort of a crisscross pattern around it. So on the reverse of this, I sort of put a little bit of tape so that this would stick. So we're just going to adhere this onto the back like that. We're going to come across the front, and then we're going to go back across here and cross into the front, just sort of in a crisscross pattern like that. And we'll adhere that down. And then what we're going to do is run the ATG all across the edges. I'm not too sure what's happening with my ATG these days. Just like that. And we'll put a couple more just for good luck. And we're going to adhere this to the front of our card in the center, just like that. And now we have the base for our card all done. So we'll set that aside. So for the interest of time, I cut the scarecrow out on the Cricut already, and I just wanted to mention that because the scarecrow is cut fairly small at 3.5, I found that I had a little bit of difficulty with some of the smaller parts. And so for the face, if I cut it out the way they show it here, I found that the eyes and the mouth and the nose, everything was just too small and sort of awkward to deal with. So I found that if I used layer 1 and press shift, I was able to cut out a full face, and then from there was able just to sort of draw on my own eyes and mouth, and it just made it a little bit easier and a little clearer for me. And also they cut out where they have the dress, sort of the cheeks and the buttons for to go on either side of her dress. And I didn't really like the way that those looked, so I took my trusty old punches from Provocraft, and they're pretty old, I guess, but they work well. And so I cut out small little cheeks that we can glue on after, and chose to use a little heart shape for the buttons that will go on either side of the dress. So I just found that that worked a little bit easier for me, but it's just as well using the Cricut if you can manage it. So I pre-assembled some of this already. So we're just going to go ahead and use our two-way glue, Zig two-way glue, and adhere our scarecrow together. Just put some glue on here. And we'll just stick this down. Get it all lined up. These are her feet. Let's see if that one goes there. Little parts are hard to get on sometimes. Put a little bit on there. And then, so I made the mistake already once before, but I put her head on almost last so that her chin sort of goes over top of her dress. I'll just put some glue on here. And so far not so bad, it's coming along. She needs a hat. I'll just put some glue on there. And also, before we move on with gluing her together, I don't know if you can see very well, I've also taken sort of just a brown, light brown colored marker, and I doodled around her dress and her hat. I thought it helped make it stand out a little better, so I'm just going to continue doodling along her shirt here, just to make it stand out a little bit more. Just like that. It gives it a little bit more dimension, I think. And here are those little teeny cheeks I was talking about. But they're quite a bit bigger using the punch as opposed to using the Cricut, I found, so. Doesn't want to stay on there. And this one. Helps it stand out just a little bit more. And there's those little heart buttons. Probably even if you could find small enough real buttons, it would look cute too. But this is always good because you can use your imagination and sort of create things the way that you want. So So I think that looks pretty cute so far. So I just also wanted to mention that I used the pattern paper here is from my Mind's Eye. The pattern part is called You Are My Sunshine, and the reverse of that paper was called Red Orange. So I used that for this shirt and the flower on her hat. And I also forgot to mention that I raised up her flower with a little bit of foam tape just to help it pop out a little bit. So, and then on top of that, I'm going to use a little bit of zip dry. I love zip dry. We'll put it here. And I just find that for things like buttons and things with hard surfaces helps stick better. So we'll just put this cute little orange button that I had on top of her flower. And then, like we had on this card here, the sentiment says Happy Fall, and I have a little star bling that I also have for there. So I think we're going to use the same thing for her, and we'll just sort of adhere this star on here with more zip dry, just a tiny bit. Let's see if I can pick this up. And I can't. There we go. We'll just put it right on there. And we're going to pull back over our card that we put together. And we're going to use some pop dots on the reverse of her here. And I probably could center that a little better there. And we'll peel off the backing. And we're going to place her right there. Push that down a little bit. So far so good. And then we will take a little bit more zip dry. Probably it's best to use, a little bit of a better glue, because this is going to be sticking to that burlap that we put on there. So you don't want to use something that's going to peel off. But anyhow, our sentiment is going to go right here, sort of on that crisscross that we made earlier. I'm just going to put this down. I guess there's no right or wrong, just sort of where you like it, and we'll just push down. And that is our female version of our Scarecrow Happy Fall card. And here's the male that I showed you earlier. And I just want to say thank you very much for joining me on my very first video, and I hope to make more cards with you soon. Take care. Thank you.